Okay, is the sound okay?
All good, coming through. Frankie's checking up and so Frankie, thanks a million for
This is going to happen from time to time with everybody going in.
Thanks very much for doing the interview.
You're welcome.
As you know, like what we're doing is a social history of Waterford Crystal and the workers there, and I suppose a celebration of the craft and the tradition that was there for so many years. Before we kind of get into talking about the glass and all that, just maybe you could fill us in a little bit about your own family background, because I suppose what we always do here is we just say, look, in 100 years' time this will be very interesting. People kind of go, what family were they now? And they'll be trying to figure out who's who and all that kind of thing. So if you could just tell us about your mum's family, your dad's family, and who they were, and where they came from.
Right. My name is Frankie O'Reilly, and I come from Waterford City, from Parliament Street, down by the Manor. And my mother was Greta O'Neill, and she worked and was brought up where the Singer sewing machine shop is now. It was called the Moneyball shop. And her parents owned the sweet factory up the back lane as you go up there, like up by the small park, by Wise Park. And my aunt May Young and Dick Young had the Central Bar and the Ritz Bar in Tramore, and they had the bottling store up the back lane as well. My mother started off, and she was classically trained as a pianist, and my aunt played cello and my other aunt played violin. And she told us a story many years later. She had enough of it. She just couldn't take any more, and she decided to run away. So she ran away to England, and it was during the war, and she got a job in the munitions factory in Coventry. And I said, Greta, I said, of all places to work, I said that was the most bombed out place in Britain at the time. Sure, I got out of it before the bombs started, and that's where I met your father. I met your father in London during the Blitz. My father, Thomas O'Reilly, was comes from Glen Terrace, down in the Glen. And my nan, she bought him out of the Irish Army, and he wanted to go and join the RAF in England to fight, and that's what he did. And that's where my parents met up.
So, two Waterford people met in Coventry?
Well, in London, yeah.
That's gas.
It is indeed, yeah. It was just those times. My mother came home, and through a trust fund, she bought 2 houses in Parliament Street, 2 3-storey houses which are now long gone. But the 2 houses that were involved, the house below it and the house above it, it was a maternity home in Parliament Street. So with our house there in 4 Parliament Street, that was our family home, and number 5 was the flats. So we had flats there. When I walked out in the back garden of my house, there was a castle in my back garden, the castle that you now see at the end of Castle Street. So we had access to that. We were able to go to the very top of the castle and see all around town, from the infirmary down to the Maryland and all around.
A very interesting history of your family, isn't it?
Yes, indeed. I mean, it was, everything was on our doorstep at the car stand. It was the Delicatus chipper, Kennedy's newspapers, Harney's bakery, the creamery, all the chippers, and then the shopping just around the corner, downtown.
And the sweet shop that your mum came from, was that long gone after that, when you were...
Oh yes, that was really long gone, but so many people around town in Waterford City that I speak to, they have great memories of the Moneyballs, finding the threepenny piece in the Moneyballs. And that was one of my mother's jobs, was actually to put the threepenny bit in the Moneyballs. She used to say that my Uncle Tommy O'Neill, he was trained in confectionery in sweets and that in England, and your Uncle Tommy used to make all the slabs of treacle and hang them up, and you know, make all sorts of sweets there. So there's great memories.
It was quite heavy, wasn't it?
It was, yes, indeed. So you had to be careful, like, you know, when you got through the money ball. You know, it was like a gobstopper, I would imagine, at the time. They also owned a clay pipe factory, Hanley's clay pipe factory. They had all the moulds there. My grandmother, whom I never knew because she had long passed on, like, you know, when I was born, she had the actual moulds, and I think they went somewhere, possibly maybe down to the Waterford College of Further Education. I'll have to explore more on that sometime, just to have a look at them.
There's great photographs from Hanley's as well.
There is indeed, yes, going back.
The factory there.
Yeah.
And again, that was up in that area, same area?
All in that area, up the back lane, past the small park, or Wise Park as we used to call it. So, yeah, just by Brown's Lane. And their family home still remains there as a Singer sewing machine shop.
And was there kind of a, like, your mum was obviously from there was a bit of money there in that side of the family?
Well, there was, because my aunt told me once that they had their own maids to actually, you know, take them down to the big park and push them around in their prams. So, yeah. So
she obviously married below her station.
Oh, your father was a very good-looking man, and he was a fantastic swimmer. And I used to go down by Cherry's Brewery and watch him swim in the river shore. She said, you know, he just dive in and.
Because that was a swimming place, wasn't it?
It was, yeah, it was. You know, besides, I don't know, well, possibly, I know the currents are treacherous there now, but in those days, I would say it was okay, like, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Must have been a good swimmer, then.
Yeah, he was, and my mother said that he saw action from North Africa all the way up to Norway with the heavy water treatment plants, or the heavy water plants for making the hydrogen bombs, or whatever the Germans did. And he was caught out in Dunkirk. He had to make his own way back from Dunkirk. When he came home, he never spoke about the war. Never spoke about it. But I really didn't know my father until I was 12 years of age, because in those days, immigration, everybody worked overseas in England, and Britain had to be rebuilt after the war. He was a scaffolder, and by all accounts, a very good scaffolder. So he told me about working down in Oxford Street, and, you know, down possibly in the Royal Festival Hall in the South Bank. And yeah, so when he was clever, he used to go around and collect, all the guys in the union collect their shilling per week for their pension. So he had an RAF pension and a British pension. In those days, people, you know, they were hungry. They were hungry going to school. And I remember that, because not that I needed it, but at that time I used to get the little half-pint bottle of milk and the currant bun in the morning. And I know there were times when some lads would come into school and they wouldn't even have their breakfast, so I would actually give them the currant bun. I didn't need it. But yeah, half a bottle of milk though in the morning.
So your dad used to work in England?
He did, yeah.
And then come home, we say,
come home. Yeah, he would indeed, yeah, and bring home all, you know, old clothes from England. And my aunt Betty, who married Reg Powell, they were used to run Warner's holiday camp on the Isle of Wight. So all my relations were down the Isle of Wight, and my brothers and sisters working, you know, in the holiday camps. So when it was my turn to go about when I was 16 years of age, he was gone then. He just resigned. My aunt and uncle, they just retired. So I never got a chance to go over there. But to hear my grandmother say, Frankie, I was up in Desolation Hill and I'm looking down at 200,000 people looking at Jimi Hendrix. You know, it was something else. And my brothers saw, you know, Bob Dylan, Rory Gallagher, anybody that passed through the Isle of Wight festivals. So that's where their summers.
You're mad about music?
I like music, yes, indeed. Yeah.
And you missed it?
I missed it, yeah. It was just about coming around to 16. But by then, you know, I had started in Waterford Crystal. I started at 15 years of age.
Yeah, but just before you get there, what primary school did you go to?
I went to the Manor School, which was just down at the end of my street.
And what was that like?
It was great. It was Christian Brothers run. It was hard but fair, you know, the Christian Brothers. It was great growing up there. You know, it was a smaller school, and playground was in the front, and if you ran around, there was another playground at the back. There was some great memories, great guys that passed through there, you know, great musicians as well, like, you know, all the Shanahans and the MacDonalds, they all passed through there. Danny Clancy, my brothers.
And did you go to secondary school?
I went down to the Central Technical Institute on the Mall, which is now the Waterford College of Further Education. So it was either going to Mount Sion or go to the Tech, as they said. So I said, I think I'd like to go to the Tech, you know, because I like to use my hands with woodworking, metal work. And yeah, that was for me.
And when you went down there then, did you already have in your head about going to the glass factory, or was that just...
No, there was always, I always knew the glass was there. The glass was always there in Johnstown. And I remember across the road my godmother, Mrs. Kelly, and my godfather, Mr. Kelly, who was the sheriff down in the Coliseum cinema with Mrs. Kerr years ago. He was the sheriff with the hat and the big coat and the flash lamp. And yeah, his son, Paddy, was a blower in Johnstown, and I remember I used to take his lunch down to the gate, and I went, you know, when I grow up, I'm going to be a blower. That's what I said I'll be, you know, because I really admired Paddy.
Like, do you remember going down with the lunch and all that?
I do indeed, yes, indeed, yeah. I remember, sure, going out to collect the starched shirts in the Good Shepherd's Convent at the time. I'd go up Castle Street, go out Hennessy's Road, and then turn down there into those big gates and walk down, and you were basically in the country, because it was a self-contained farm with fields, cows, at the church, which is now the part of WIT College, you know. The knocking on the latch would slide open, and all I just remember is just seeing a nun's face enclosed there, and just hand out the starched shirts and hand in the money.
Who were the shirts for?
Shirts were for my brothers or for the neighbours across the road. It was great. Everybody left their keys in the doors at that time. Everybody trusted everybody. Everybody called in for a cup of sugar, you know. It was very, very, how should I say, you know, real family spirited, orientated.
And when you were saying that you wanted to go to the glass factory, what was it? Was it the money, or what was it?
I just felt that it was all the generations of people that used to work there. If your dad worked in Waterford Crystal, then you're sure that you might follow, you know, straight later on, or your brothers there. In its heyday, there was 3,000 people working there, which is basically a town, a small town. I actually applied for the job. It was also because my friends were there. I used to hang around with Teddy O'Neill, who was a blower, and Michael O'Toole, who became a cutter, Nicky White, and all the guys I hung around with. We all said we'd go out, and they were taking on people. We'd go out and we'll do the interviews. And I did, and Sean Dunphy, I think, was there doing the interviews. And I was accepted. I actually went out when I was 14 years of age. I was accepted. They said, he's too young, he can't start. He's not 15 to start his apprenticeship. And about 9 days to go before I was, the 3rd of October, 15 years of age. Sean Dunphy said, I'm sure, let him in, you know. And there was a 5-year apprenticeship there to become a qualified cutter. I must say that when I arrived at Johnstown that day, when I arrived down to attend the interview, I was shown into the cutting shops. So I said, okay, I don't think I'm going to be a blower. It's a cutting for me. So I did the wedge cutting exam. At that time it was uprights on a goblet and a star on the base.
And what did you like about the cutting? You said that you had your head to be a blower.
Yeah.
And then what did you like about the cutting?
It was more artistic. It was, apart from the blower, using your hands and using your mouth to create molten glass and form it into the shape that's asked of you. With the cutting, you were giving a piece of crystal, whether it's a goblet or a decanter or a bowl. It's all marked out, and you had to follow the pattern. And that's what I liked, using my hands. And apart from being a bit artistic, I liked the idea of creating crystal and creating designs that flowed.
As an apprentice, then, what was it like being an apprentice? Did you see yourself like? Were you put on a bench then?
Yes, it turned out then that I wasn't destined to become a wedge cutter. There was vacancies for a flat cutting or rind tour. And a rind tour cutter is a person that cuts all the flat bits on the crystal. It's like the necks of decanters, the flat bits that will complement the wedge cutting on a bowl or a trophy. The stems, and all the stems. So this is a six-sided stem, and in my day, I would imagine I would cut close to 1 million stems in my lifetime that I worked there, all different patterns.
That was your speciality?
Well, yes, stems, next decanters, But as you said, when you serve your apprenticeship, you start off like from zero, from ground zero. When you start off, you're giving a six-sided cut to do on a glass. And the master cutter would have cut out the rough shape on the grinding wheel. The first helper would have smoothed it out on a smooth grinding wheel. And then you would take out all the rough carborundum, all that carborundum on a stone wheel. So it was carborundum wheel, and stone wheel. And that's how you achieved the cut. This was long before the diamond wheels came in. We would have worked on those particular glasses for quite a while, for months on end, until you were actually given a stem to cut, and you were taught all the way through, by your master cutter, who was teaching you, along with having a bench of 12 people to work with as well.
And what year did you start?
I started in 1972.
And can you remember any of the older guys at that stage when you started? Like the fellas that you looked up to?
Well, yes. My master cutter is still alive. Billy Anderson, Ray Anderson from the Cork Road, Al Bowman, Brendan Wise, Tony McAvoy, sadly passed on, Dick O'Connor, great friend of mine, sadly passed on, Tony Kelly, Kevin Nobbo Flynn, lots of guys too from all over the southeast, from Wexford, from Tipperary, from Kilkenny. They'd all travel down, and every day before they got accommodation in Waterford City, they would travel down every day, 30 miles plus.
Mm. And as apprentices, did you find that you were, was it hard to kind of establish yourself in a place where there's all these older men and all that kind of stuff?
Yes, it was like, I won't say the pecking system, but they had a sense of authority there. You knew your place, you knew you had to learn, you had to create this particular glass, and it was all about quality control. Having your piece of glass up to the standard that is required for Waterford Crystal. Yes, with the guys there, it was a 15-year-old going into a work environment with older men. You sort of looked up to it, and sometimes they'd put the fear of God into you, but it was only just to bring on your cutting qualities.
And they all had nicknames too over there.
They had, yeah. There was my name. I'm known as Frenchie. Yeah.
Where did that come from?
That came from down in the Coliseum. We used to come out afterwards, like, you know, and the Coliseum, the Garda station was opposite that, the old Garda station, and you'd have the containers by the quayside. So after the cowboy movies, we'd all run riot and climb up on these containers and, you know, play cowboys and Indians. And in that particular cowboy film, there was a guy called Frenchie in it, so they called me Frenchie, and that's how my nickname stuck. And
I mean, there was not a good. I mean, someone who we talking to was saying about Bobby Gall was saying that his dad was the general.
That's right, the general. Yeah. There was another guy called Blackie, and I don't know why they called him Blackie. Somebody said I think his father passed a picket in Clover Meads or something years and years ago, so he was stuck with Blackie. There was Nuki. There was Nonner O'Connor from Tramore was a wedge cutter. Shammy, the late great Shammy Power, who around this time every year in Christmas period used to play Santa. And you know, if you'd done anything naughty during the year, he'd write it down, he'd remember it. But he'd call you up to receive the present, and you'd be picked out of the crowd. You know, in the blank store, you'd have hundreds of people there when we had the break on, and Santa would be dressed up, and you'd have to say thank you, Santa, when you received the present. And he'd open up the present, and it could be a replica of your driving license that you lost earlier on that year that you might have got back at the end of the year. But Shammy or Santa would remember. It was, you know, 3,000 people there, but it was like one large, big family. Everybody knew each other in Waterford Crystal.
So it was good crack there.
There was great crack. It was really good, you know, and you know, when you said that, you know, oh, they were great, you know, people, you know, great factory to pay. Well, you know, in the blowing and the cutting sections, we never knew what we were going to earn until we got that pallet of glass on a Monday morning. And that particular glass or goblet or bowl, it mightn't be priced great. So, you know, you had to work very hard in order to make your wages. And then beyond your wages, it was piece rated. So anything above that, you know, you were paid on that. And we worked damn hard. We really did.
And on that subject, a lot of people from Waterford started in the glass factory, but didn't last very long.
No, it wasn't their forte, or it wasn't their calling, so to speak, you know. So yeah, lots of guys, you know, dropped out afterwards, and they ended up, you know, driving vans or you know, working in offices or went back to college and education. So yeah, it wasn't for them. But sorry.
I mean, you would have to be fairly kind of, I don't know what it'd be like. I mean, it was tough work. Like, you have to be. It was. You know, you'd go down to the blowing platforms and you'd watch those blowers, like, you know, drink their weight and, you know, and sweat every day, because it was intensive. And just to watch those guys on the platform, and it was like a dance. It was like a rhythm that everybody knew what their place was, and to take the molten glass from the furnace and to go there, and the next guy, it's like a dance. They used to dance around each other, you know. Health and safety then was paramount, really, in those days, and you had to watch out for your colleagues. In the cutting shops, the wedge cutters had you know, very sharp you know, wedge wheels, but they could take them down and put them up by hand. In the flat cutting, we used to work with wheels that were possibly 2 to 3 feet high, possibly 10 to 12 inches wide, pure solid stone. So we used to have a crane to lift that up, and 2 of us to manoeuvre it onto the shaft and bolt it on right before we actually started it and have it perfect, before we actually started to sharpen it. We used to sharpen it with, believe it or not, sharpen the stone wheels with carborundum stones, broken bits of carborundum stones, and then fine stones, and get a beautiful, nice, lovely, smooth cut, in order for it to take all the carborundum or rough bits out, so you could actually look through it when you wet the glass. Before it was acid polished or acid dipped. Like you were talking earlier on about, you know, the crack and the community of the place, and you were in from quite a long period. So, I mean, from the 70s right through to 2009, was it?
Yes, indeed. I spent 3 weeks in Johnstown, and then the new factory was built in Kilbarry. And when I went out there, it was just, freshly painted and everything, and it was just a modern factory to work in 1972 when I went out there. And it was great. It was, more room to move about, and it was just, the facilities were great. The canteen was so large that, everybody you'd meet, the breaks were staggered. And the canteen ladies would come through the factory and sell the blaz in Johnstown and that before you actually arrived at the canteen to eat them. The blaz and the potato crisps and the luncheon sausage,
And did you mind all the visitors coming through and all that kind of stuff?
Well, no, I didn't. K4 in the end was dedicated to the tourist trail. It was a purpose-built tourist trail there. But in the early days, in K1 and K2, K4, the tourists would come there. No, the tour guides would take them in. They'd actually come in on the bench. You'd know they're there, and you just cut away because you knew that you were selling your craft. And it was at its heyday. You'd have about 1,800 tourists a day would pass through, possibly more.
And did you remember, especially when you were in Johnstown, like any of the original craftspeople that came over from Europe and all that, like the taught the local folks?
Well, Miroslav Havel was there, great designer, great sculptor. I saw Mr. Bacik once. He was one of the original guys that was asked to come over to start off Waterford Crystal before the McGrath family took it over. David Cretzen's father, Joe Cretzen, was there on the blowing room. Giulio Gianni's father, he was a blower, and there's lots of guys on. The name slips me now, but
so
they came from Europe and Eastern Europe after the war, and they had the skills and the know-how in order to teach, and pass it on to the new workers. So yeah.
And obviously you were there quite a long time. How did you see it changing over the years working in the factory?
Well, it was when my boss was there. The managers was Jim Purcell, Jimmy Cusick, and Mr. Corelli, who was an Italian man that lived on the German road, and he was great. He could do everything. He could cut wedge cutting. He could do flat cutting, but he was a great cutter. And how it changed was, I suppose, how it changed. It looked the same internally, but it was changing all the time, like with modern machinery. And how it changed as well was we had a very good union there, and they fought for our. How shall I put it? They fought for our rights in there as regards working conditions, medical, sick pay, holidays, and basically just bringing up the quality of life for a worker in there in Waterford Crystal. Also, the introduction then of diamond wheels came later, and they replaced the big heavy stone wheels. And we worked on diamond wheels, which were about a foot and a half wide and about 2 to 4 inches long in order to cut the stems. So we would have encrusted with industrial diamonds. They would actually cut the 6-sided stem, and then we would run over them and smooth them out with our smooth diamond wheel. In the last 6 years of my working life there, I was running a bench, and I decided I needed a change. So I went into the world's sports trophies depth, and were there with my colleagues Peter Phelan And Shawnee Burke was there before me, great cutter. All the guys, they showed me what to do. I knew what to do, but the trophies, you're talking about once off $30,000-$40,000 worth of trophies. And worked hand in hand with the designers, tweaking the designs if need be. Anything from cutting the base from the Super Bowl trophy to the Solheim Cup to the Irish Open trophies and once-off pieces. A lot of pressure there, you know, in order to get it right, because you know, and even working on the lids themselves, like the lids could take maybe possibly 6-8 hours to actually cut. And because you needed to smooth them off, they'd have to fit in the actual trophy itself. Well, it was good, I liked it. It was a challenge, it was different.
And did you get the opportunity to go to the States?
Yes, I worked in the Tourist Trail. I applied for that while working in the World Sports Trophies depth. And it gave me a chance for maybe about 3 or 4 months of the year to work 7 days on. I worked 7 days on, but I got 7 days off. So I'd work Monday to Sunday. And working in the Tourist Trail, we would be there like with my colleagues and 2 wedge cutters and 1 flat cutter. And in this area where it's the last place where the tourists would come down. And we would actually give them our spiel on the flat cutting. Here's a flat cutting, and we'd give a demonstration. And that's supposed to be the wow factor. And from the time they got back to the gallery, in those 20 minutes after leaving us and asking all the questions that they needed to ask us, they would decide, it would determine then whether they would purchase a piece of Waterford crystal. And that was the wow factor, and that's why the Tourist Trail was there. I applied to be a Waterford US artisan, and so I was trained there and in calligraphy. So what we did, and we were sent to the States and for various promotions, and to go into all the stores. The top stores in America and independent jewelers that would request us going over there.
So you'd be kind of sitting there doing a little job and people coming in?
Would actually, the calligraphy that I learned would actually sign the Waterford crystal with a buzzer or an engraving pen. So you'd sign possibly the date. So the most important thing was the date. And I'd write down the date every morning because, you know, the 25th of the 12th, 2018. Over in America, it's the 12th of the 25th, 2018. So don't get the date wrong. That was the first thing you do every morning. So, you know, you'd be working in the stores from early in the morning, and possibly you'd sign up to $25,000, $30,000, $40,000 worth of crystal per day. You would be over there for roughly over 20 days, you know, 13 working days, but in the meantime, you're crisscrossing the States, depending.
What years was this?
Well, I remember the first time I went out there was 2005, and I flew down to Tennessee, to Nashville. And from Nashville, which was my base for a while, we drove into Kentucky and up the Smoky Mountains, to various different places in Kentucky, like Louisville and Chattanooga. I was in Nashville, and from there then we drove down to Memphis in Tennessee, and onwards to New Orleans. And it was 3 months after Hurricane Katrina, and the store that I was due to work in was flooded out. So we worked in, my colleague, not my colleague, but the rep who was with me, Sally from Texas, because they would have about their portfolio of $2 to $3 million worth of Waterford crystal in order to push through the stores, and they'd have cover about 3 states. So we were in this new store, and the other store was flooded, and I'd always remember. The toasting flutes came out at the time. It was the Millennium toasting flutes. And she actually had a pair. She purchased a pair. And so I'd always write down, like, I said, what do you want me to sign on the basis of the crystal? So I'd write it out. Okay, Katrina. So I wrote it out in a pen, engraved over it. And for the second flute, what shall I put on it? And she said, Gone with the Wind. And like, you're smiling there, but I just had to ask her why. I said, my house was flooded. All my Waterford crystal was wiped out. This is the first pair of flutes that I bought in order to, build up my Waterford crystal collection again. And to remember, it said Hurricane Katrina and Gone with the Wind, to remember that. So, yes.
And, like, I suppose Waterford people wouldn't really appreciate that too much, in the sense that people did collect stuff, didn't they? They collected the whole...
Oh, yeah. When Con Dooley went out there, was selling it, it just took off. They had brilliant marketing out there. It was like, I think, Bord Fáilte, or it was like a Bord Fáilte marketing, sort of a plan. And I think possibly at that time, probably 30, 40 million people can claim, Irish heritage. But it was just, it was the purest of crystal. There was no seconds, everything. There was no flaws, there was no bubbles then at that time. But if there was, like, we were always told that somebody can hold up a bubble to you, say, well, that's a moment in time when the gas was captured, like when the blower was blowing it from the furnace. So it's unique in itself, and it is. What I was trying to say was there was no seconds in Waterford crystal, when the blower blew the bowl, he got paid on that. Everybody got paid all the way down, and the wedge cutter probably got paid on it. And if I was working on it and I broke it, I didn't get paid, but they all got paid. And you're probably wondering why it was so expensive, and that in itself, made it quite expensive.
Because every craftsperson was getting paid on the way.
Yes, indeed, yes, until it went down to the very last in the line. So quality and control was all, really, yeah.
And you think that the Americans appreciated that?
They did. They knew the quality. They knew it in Waterford crystal and coming through the stores. And I don't know how they feel now about it. I don't know how they feel that it's outsourced from all different companies all over Europe. But Waterford crystal was made in Waterford City, in Dungarvan, in Butlerstown, the chandeliers.
And then obviously at the end we had a very sad ending to the whole thing.
Yes, I remember at the time, I think I was away, or maybe I was working up in Dublin in Nassau Street in Kilkenny or Blarney, signing up there. And I knew I had a few days off, but I received a text, get into the factory straight away. Something big is happening. It's an emergency. So I drove in, came upon the gallery, and the Deloitte had more or less decided to lock us out. Well, then we decided that we need to hold our ground here, and the union decided to take over the gallery and have a sit-in. And the security, or the heavy guys, were brushed aside, and we occupied the gallery.
That must have been very emotional for everybody.
It was for a lot, yeah, it was for everybody, to say that, yes. But I was out for a few days. I came in, and I never went back into the factory. I never cleaned out my locker. I left my apron in there, my boots. I just decided that this is closure for me now. I never went back in. I went back in afterwards. I had a look around at just the empty, the blowing platforms, the cutting shops. Kilbarry was quite a big place. Really was the largest crystal factory possibly in the world, to some stage. And now all my colleagues, all that craft is going to be lost. I know some of my former colleagues are now working in the House of Waterford Crystal and that, but basically, you know, the cutting is done overseas, all the mass production. But all my colleagues that are passed on and still alive, they have all that craft. It's going to be lost.
And what would you think about that as regards, you know, like, given the fact that when you went in there you were 15, like, there's a lot of young lads here in Waterford, or they'll never get the chance to do that like that with their hands. I mean, what's... You know?
I'm just saying, the apprenticeship for me was good to serve. Apart from that, I had to train another 3-4.5 years to become a master cutter. It's about 8.5, 9 years in total. It's a hell of a long time. But I would say for anybody starting off their apprenticeship now, stick with it, whether it's an electrician, block layer, welder, you know. I think it's lost here in this country. With our craft, sadly, I don't think we'll get it back. I think we have our own Waterford handmade glass down in Cathedral Square, and I think those guys are doing a fine job. Former blowers and cutter.
This is the kite.
That's right, yes, you know. It's great. I think if...
And what do you think of that coloured glass and all that? What do you think of it?
Well, I think it's brilliant. It's great. I was in Venice. I saw the Murano glass. Dale Gilhooly, he was the guy that came over from Seattle Hot Shops over there, the blowing room. Although he didn't blow himself, he conducted like a conductor in an orchestra. All the guys that got to work with him at the time in the blowing rooms out in Butlerstown, they thought he was brilliant. It freed them from the rigid monotony of production. That there's nothing wrong with it, they were producing, but it was an introduction of colour, and they created beautiful chandeliers which were hung on the bridges of Venice, like in exhibitions and that. And I would say that you can ask the guys down there, I would say they got the ideas from Gilhooly. You know, it was, now they're creating freedom of expression, they're creating something that comes from them. And I think it's wonderful. I think there should be more independent hot shops or little, you know, independent blowing places like that. There's room for more. Also, I think there should be cottage cutting industries, and I think there should be more of them. I know former colleague of mine, good friend of mine, Sean Daly. Sean Daly has Dingle Crystal, and his late brother, his wife runs Kinsale Crystal. And tourists come from all over the world, you know. It's still, Sean is keeping that craft alive. Even now he's out in Las Vegas at an exhibition out there. He's promoting and selling, he's selling Dingle Crystal, he's selling Dingle, he's selling Kerry, he's selling Ireland as a destination.
And Frankie, to go back to when you're working in the glass and the lads and the crack and all that kind of stuff, I mean, I know there was lots of other things separate to the work, like there was a social club, there was just sports.
We had the Rhine Tour
social club. There was a whole other world, wasn't there, part of the setup?
Yes, indeed, yeah. Everybody had their social clubs, the blower social clubs. They had K1, K2, K3, K4, so large. I remember there was 150 Rhine Tour flat cutters when we started off. Went down then basically to maybe about less than 57, I would imagine, you know, even less then. But we had our social clubs, and we'd go out, we'd run a bus maybe out to Cheek Point, Dunmore, Harney's of Dunhill, or even up to have a night out in the band room in Barrack Street, where we'd get together and sing a few songs. We'd have darts nights, pool nights. It was great. It was great camaraderie. It was great, you know. When you're finished the routine of work, it was just cutting loose with a few beers. And we had our own Waterford Crystal Social Centre. We had many a great night out there as well, and the swimming pool. But yeah, it was good. Enjoyed it, you know.
Frankie, tell us a little bit about those pieces that you've done.
Well, this piece here is the Royal Tara It's not a goblet, it's a claret. And in order, you had to do your 3-year test in order to pass it, and that was a jug. You had a 4-year test, which was a decanter, and the 5-year test was a Royal Tara decanter. It's the most expensive decanter in Waterford Crystal. This is a, what did I say? It's, hang on now, hold up, not a goblet. And this is a 606 Royal Tara claret. And the cutting on that would involve possibly 15 cutting wheels, rough and smooth. You'd use you'd get it marked out. You would use your rough decanter, your rough carborundum wheel, your smooth carborundum wheel, and then your stone wheel. So you can see there's 3 wheels, 2 wheels, 2 wheels, 2 wheels, and the actual base is actually cut as well. So it's time consuming, there's a lot of work, and that's why rind tour or flat cutting crystal is more expensive than the actual wedge cutting, some of it anyway.
And what did that retail for when you were there?
In 2009, I think that retailed for 330 euros, I think, per glass.
Wow.
So it is really a collector's item, and you know, it's sold because we used to always keep on cutting it. And that's part of
and do you
the.
know when you said 606?
Yeah, that was the numbers. It was all ingrained in our psyche there. You know, the Lismore goblet, the best-selling goblet in the world. That's the 600 318. So if you said there's a pallet of glass coming down, 600 318 goblets consisting of 150 glasses, you know exactly in your head how much you were going to earn. We spoke about earning money there and what you needed to cut and above that to make your piece rate.
And what were the other numbers? Can you remember any other numbers?
Oh, you have me there now. See, that's why the book. You're going to edit all this. I know you are. That's why the book is there, you know, and I needed to run through the book and to have all.
Okay, no hassle, no hassle.
Yeah.
Show us your 2 pieces, because
Okay.
they're really interesting from the point of view of just like the workers used to make these pieces.
Yeah. You know, there was great ingenuity at the time there, you know, from the blowers making crystal walking sticks to fish.
The swans.
And the swans were superb, you know. You get some great ideas, you know. As I said, I like music, and at the time I decided I'll shape out, make a guitar. So I shaped that out and I gave it to my friend who was still working in the House of Waterford Crystal, Michael Murphy. He's one of the sculptors there, one of the top designers, and he actually tweaked it a little bit more, but he actually designed that and sandblasted the strings and the fret there.
Of course.
Yeah. So he just added on a bass there, and they were just throwaway pieces of crystal.
And what's written on it?
Slow Hand for Eric Clapton, and Fender up there.
Brilliant.
There you go. Another piece I would have would be...
An awful shame about the football team, but anyway.
Well, you know, we support Waterford hurling, you know, Munster rugby, but everybody's got their overseas premiership team. And this is basically a block of glass. And my good friend Tom Croke, great designer, former cutter, he allowed me to sandblast the Liverpool crest on it. So, and that's just basically a piece of throwaway grey crystal, and I just shaped it, got the wedge cutter to actually cut it, and cut the base. There you go. And it's actually glass bonded on. So, just a little memento.
And was it okay for the workers to do that?
It was and it wasn't. It was
kind of unofficial.
Well, you know, it was more or less asked the manager, look, give me a note for that so I can take it out through security. Sure, you know, although it's not production piece, you know, it was okay, you know.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's why, I mean, everybody in Waterford would have a swan. Or a fish.
Oh, yes.
And they were allowed out, were they?
They were allowed out. They would get a note from their manager, because they used to make it in their spare time. It was amazing how they introduced colours. They'd come down and they asked for aftershave bottles. you know, empty aftershave bottles, because the red or the blue or the, you know, whatever the colours would be in the Old Spice, they would actually melt and mould it, and it would run into the colours of the swan. Or the fish, you know.
And so the workers did this themselves, like they came up with this idea?
Yeah, it was brilliant. It was ingenuity, you know. It's a little, say, no, a small little once-off violet vase, and maybe a napkin holder. So the napkin holder would just rest there, and it looks like there's two wheels there. And with the violet vase, they cut a piece in it and just rest it down, and you have a little cannon. So from those two pieces, you could create something different.
And so these are not official, there are no stamps or anything like that?
No, there's no stamps.
All the workers themselves?
Yeah, just your idea is a memento to keep.
And the other thing which is kind of funny too is that a lot of Waterford people never went out to the factory to look at it.
No, it's like when I was with my good friend Perry O'Toole in New Jersey years ago, and we were just looking across at the Manhattan skyline, and Perry's friend that he worked with, Joss, he said, isn't it, yeah, it really looks great. He said, I've never been over there. So from a guy living in New Jersey that never travelled over to see Manhattan, it happens, yeah.
But there was kind of a funny thing too in Waterford, wasn't there, about the glass factory as well, that there was a bit of resentment about the wages and all that kind of stuff.
Well, you know how hard we work for them now. But yes, it was, any charity in Waterford never asked. We were always there for every charity, you know, for every good cause, from Waterford Crystal. And, you know, when you think about it, we spent in Waterford, from the motor industry, from all the services around there, from all the stores. When we got our summer bonus, on the strength of our summer bonus, a week before that, we could go down to the travel agents. The travel agents knew we were coming down to book our continental holidays or whatever. They knew, you know, on the strength of it. We were good spenders, you know. But you must realise then, in Charlie Hoy's era, we had to earn £16,000 or euros to get off of the PRSI. And we used to work like crazy. We were fools to do it, to get off the PRSI. It meant more money for the government. But at that time it was 54% tax, 1% youth unemployment levy. There was another service charge, something else for PMPA that went down to Swanee. So in the end, we were paying something like 64, close to 70% of our wages due to tax, pension, everything, VHI. All was left was possibly 30 to 34 pence out of that pound or euro. And that's where all the money went. They said at one time that the tax that Waterford Crystal paid was equivalent to all the farmers in Ireland paid per year. Now, this is legend once again, you know.
But it was a huge amount of money.
It was, yes. But it gave back to the city. It did.
And like obviously now, I mean, when you see the fact that it's all gone and all that kind of stuff, does that upset you, or do you just? No,
as I said, I got closure. I didn't, you know, by not going back in again. And you know, after 36, going on 37 years, like in production, I said I'm going to vegetate if I'm not. I've got to do something. And I went back to college, just to keep my hand in. You know, I would meet guys and say, look, you know, do something. I said, do a forklift course. If you got a camera, do a photography course. But, you know, no, I'm all right, you know. But the following year, I'd meet these guys and, yep, I'm doing something, you know. Get back into it. Do not vegetate. Education is lifelong learning.
Yeah, because, I mean, obviously the other side of it then is if you don't, a lot of people, I mean, an awful lot of people have died, and an awful lot of people have.
Yes, a lot of my colleagues died since 2009, and you know, it was unique, and the union will tell you that the company was made insolvent. The pension was made insolvent as well. It was insolvent, it was unique. But we had nothing, we had no pension. And only for the union that went and took the Irish government to court to the EU, we would not have got our pension, 2/3 of a pension. We had 100% of nothing, now we've got 2/3 of something. I'll always be grateful to the union for that. Yes, and it was from 2009 and it was 2013, and 45 of my colleagues in Waterford Crystal passed on.
Before they got the pension?
Yeah. I just think it should have been fixed up before that, but it was just the government, barristers, lawyers, the wording of it, everything. That's what I feel a bit sore about. The colleagues that have passed on that could have enjoyed, you know, that it could have been fixed up, that they had reached the age where they could have enjoyed their pension then.
Okay, Frankie, thanks a million for doing that.
You're more than welcome.
And I know Keith will want to get a couple of shots. Do you want to get a couple of shots? And also, I want you to take, Frankie's got nice photographs.